Welcome to Sakshi TV. Today we are talking to Prashanthi Reddy from the offices of PLCC, Prashanthi Reddy PLCC. From the offices of Prashanthi Reddy PLCC. Sakshi TV now has 3 shows every week. On Tuesday at 3 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Sheila Murthy, on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy, and on Friday at 6 p.m. EST with attorney Bhanu Alindra. Please tune in to ask your questions. And if you're an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note that the attorneys will not answer please note that any information given on the show is not supposed to be taken for legal advice, and Sakshi TV is not responsible for any tips that are taken as legal advice. And the information provided on the show is for general informational purposes only. If you need specific legal advice, please contact the attorney directly. Ms. Prashanthi Reddy needs no introduction, but if you need consultation, please log on to readyesq.com for contact information. And when you connect with them, don't forget to mention Sakshi TV from the beginning. Sakshi TV. And from the beginning, readyesq.com has put a wealth of free information and online tools in the hands of the immigrant community and for the benefit of US employers. The readyesq.com site provides you with the latest and cutting-edge information on US immigration law and policies, explained in terms you don't have to be a lawyer to understand. Today's topic is a continuation of Employment-Based Green Cards, Part 3. We will continue the knowledge session along with the news and updates on latest immigration, followed by Q&A. Before we get into the topic, you can call us on the numbers on the screen for questions related to immigration and also ask for tips. Hello, Ms. Prashanthi.
Hi, Tony. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I hope you're doing well too. So, before we get into the topic, are there any immigration updates you'd like to share with our viewers?
No, let's just go to the topic directly. I don't really have any updates this week.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, we're talking about employment-based green cards. It's a continuation. So, can you tell us the differences or the privileges and benefits associated with EB1, EB2 and EB3, or which one to particularly choose or which one is easier to get?
So, it's really not about what is easier or not. I guess what it's about is what you qualify for. So, as you just stated, the I-140 is that's a topic that we're talking about today. We're talking about I-140 immigrant petition applications, and the I-140 immigrant petition applications, there are different categories in the I-140 immigrant based petitions. So as you just stated, the different categories are EB1, EB2, EB3. All these EB basically stands for employment based, and so it's employment based category 1, 2 and 3. So that's, it's an acronym. So there's no science involved in the nomenclature of the I-140. So the employment-based first category to start with, since that's number 1, is persons of extraordinary ability. So they're different under EB1. They're different categories. And the advantage of EB1, and I know you asked me about the advantages and disadvantages of each. So while I remember it, let me tell you the advantages of an EB1 are that the EB1 categories for green card purposes are the fastest to get, because when you look at the visa bulletin, so every year certain number of visas are allotted worldwide, and those visas are then sub-allotted to each country. So India gets about 7% of those worldwide visas, so there's often a backlog in the visa numbers, which means that you can file the labor, then you file the I-140, which is the second step, which is what we're talking about now, and you might have a long wait before you file for your adjustment status, or the third step, which is the 485, because you have to wait until your visa number becomes available before you can file the 485. So the availability of the visa number differs between EB1, EB2 and EB3. EB1 visa number is usually the most available because the least number of people qualify to file it. Otherwise, everybody would file under EB1. And then it's EB2, and then accordingly it's EB3. So EB1, there are various categories under EB1. The first category is persons of extraordinary ability. That is an individual who can establish extraordinary ability in the sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics. and they have to demonstrate sustained national or international acclaim. And their achievements have to have been recognized in the field through extensive documentation, and the individual seeks entry to continue to work in that extraordinary ability area. So you see, you have to document this, and you have to show that they have, it's not a one-time thing, but it's sustained national or international acclaim, and it has to be well documented, and it has to be in the area of sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics. Arts can be fine arts, or it can be performing arts, so any of those categories. The second EB1 category, and it's just because I'm saying second, it doesn't mean that it's any less or there's any difference in processing time or the visa number time that we were talking about. All these come under EB1. So the second category is outstanding professor and researcher. So for this, the individual has to establish that he or she is an outstanding professor researcher by demonstrating that he or she is recognized internationally as outstanding in a specific area and has, 3 or more years of experience in that particular field. And the individual must be sponsored by the institution. So there's an employer based in this. Now, the persons of extraordinary ability, there's no employer that needs to sponsor them. For professors and researchers, it has to be sponsored by a employer to conduct research. And that employment facility should have employed at least 3 persons full-time in research activity. So there's some criteria for the employer as well. And in addition to that, of course, the person must be accomplished in the field of research, and they have to show that they have done outstanding research, and they have to show how that research is useful for the, in the national interest of the United States, in the healthcare interest of the United States. So that's the second I-140 category. The third one is multinational executive and managers. For this also you need to be employed, so an employer is sponsoring your I-140, unlike the first one. And in this category, you are usually people from an L1A will then transcend into an I-140 EB1 for multinational executive. So because the criteria is very similar for both. So a person who's working as a multinational executive or a manager qualifies for this particular category, and the person has to establish that they worked in a managerial or executive capacity for 1 year with the parent or the subsidiary organization previously. So basically a multinational executive, you're getting a green card based on the fact that the company abroad is sending you to the US to take care of operations here as, a high-level executive or a manager. Now, the last EB1 category is a national interest waiver category, and this is also a category whereby you do not require an employer in the EB1 category. So national interest waiver comes in EB2, and there you require an employer. So the EB1, because we're doing EB1 right now, doesn't require a labor certification. And none of the EB1s, by the way, require the first step, which is the labor certification. So the national interest waiver is, again, is someone who should be given a green card in the national interest of the United States. So the individual must demonstrate that he or she would do something so significant, or has already done something so significant as to benefit US national interest. So this is a pretty high category. It is, if you are a scientist and you choose to do, you could qualify under any of the categories. You could qualify under outstanding researcher or professor, you could qualify under extraordinary ability, or you can qualify under national interest. So just to let you know that the criteria for national interest is usually the hardest because you are self-petitioning and you have no employer. So usually these cases are more difficult to approve. So that's for EB1, and then Torni, you were asking me about EB2 and EB3 as well.
Right.
So for the EB2 and EB3 category, the difference is, and the disadvantage is that the visa numbers are not that great. I mean, the availability of dates for Indian nationals are not that great under EB2 and EB3. EB2 is again better than EB3, but recently we've seen an uptick in the EB3 dates while EB2 has remained static, and then it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes one is EB2 is better, sometimes EB3 is better, so it's always differs, but usually EB2 is better because EB2 criteria is for people who have an advanced degree or many years of work experience, which is equivalent to an advanced degree in the field of, again, arts, sciences, or business. And employment-based category, third preference is a person who has a bachelor's degree, if it's a skilled worker. Again, there are two subcategories in the skilled worker and unskilled workers. Skilled workers are the professionals, and skilled workers are those that have where the job requires at least 2 years or more of experience. Unskilled workers is when your job requires less than 2 years of experience. Right now, the visa numbers, priority date is the same for both. So it really doesn't matter under which categories you file. The main disadvantage of the EB2, EB3, as I said, is the priority dates availability, and also the fact that a labor cert has to be filed before an I-140 can be filed. Unlike the EB1 category, where an I-140 is filed directly and you can bypass the first step, which will save you about a year, and also, there's less scrutiny because you don't have to go to the Labor Department, you don't have to show that there are no other US citizens, etc., available for the job. So obviously it's in some senses less of a hassle to file via EB1 if you qualify. The main issue with EB1 is not many people qualify for an EB1. So I think, Tony, that answers your that particular question that you had.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Reddy. Is there any, since we're talking about employment-based categories, and we are continuing the last week's session, I'd also like to ask a specific question. Is there any particular way to organize evidence for the I-140 petition, since we were talking about the I-140s last week too?
Right. So yes, and because we have so many varied types of I-140s, I have to kind of go through specific ones just to give you examples. But maybe later we can talk about what evidence is required, because an EB1 evidence is very different from EB2 and EB3. But in general, all I-140s, well, let me rephrase that. All I-140s that have are EB2 and EB3, that is, that require an employer to sponsor them, have an ability to pay issue because there is a labor cert that was filed, and one of the requirement is that you show that the employer has the ability to pay the prevailing wage as per which the PERM was approved. So an important in the documentation for EB2 and EB3 would be the employer's ability to pay. So you would definitely have to submit the tax returns of the employer. You'd have to submit pay stubs of the beneficiary and W-2s, because if they're already getting paid that amount, or at least part of that amount, it's easier to show than that the remaining amount can be shown through the taxes by looking at the net current assets, or by looking at the profits, the taxable income. So the order for these kind of cases would then be documentation to show, well, first the PERM approval would have to be, the original PERM approval with signatures would have to be submitted. And even before that, of course, you would have to submit checks. Let's start with that. And then we'd have to submit the actual I-140 form. And then I think behind that I would put the PERM approval. And then I would usually put the status, proof of status, so the I-94, H-1B approval, whatever, I-797 approval they might have, H-4, H-1, whatever their status is. And then, presuming, of course, they're in the US. If they're not in the US, then we don't have to worry about status documents. Behind the status documents, I would usually put documents to show that the person qualifies for the job. In the PERM, there is a requirement. The job requires a bachelor's or a master's and X number of years of experience, and maybe certain skills. So I would show through that, via that documentation, such as educational credentials, evaluation of the educational credentials, experience letters showing skills, maybe, or skill certifications. These are documents that would come next. Basically documents that show that the beneficiary qualifies for the job. And then, I would, include documentation to show ability to pay, like we discussed the W-2, the pay stubs. I would show that documentation. Behind that, and last but not the least, I would put the passport. So these are all the different, I guess this is the order of documentation that I would follow for the EB2 and EB3 category. Now, there's also different documentation that's needed for the EB1 categories. It's completely different. And then again in the EB1 categories, depending on whether it's an L1 or if it is L1 based, which is multinational executive, or it's exceptional ability, or it's a national interest waiver. There are different documentation that will be included, and we can discuss that when we talk about those categories.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, what eligibility criteria should be identified in the case of EB1-A, Alien of extraordinary ability, petitions in form of I-140?
Right. So that's the next question. Thank you for asking them. I'm asking it in order so we can get through one thing at a time. Right. So the extraordinary ability is what we just discussed. What documents are needed for an EB2 and EB3 I-140. So let's discuss the extraordinary ability EB1 category. And you basically have to demonstrate, as I was saying earlier, that the person has a sustained national or international acclaim, and that person's achievements have been recognized by experts in that field. And so you can include either evidence of a one-time achievement, such as a major international or national award, or 3 of the 10 listed criteria as per USCIS. And the different criteria as per USCIS, the 10 different criteria is evidence of recipient of a lesser national or internationally recognized prize or award. So not the Nobel Prize, we're talking about something lesser than that.
Right.
It can be nationally or internationally recognized. For example, I did a EB1 for a singer who used to sing in the movie industry. It's again very, very national and very localized in Andhra Pradesh. So for that particular person, I submitted. She had she got the Nandi Award. I don't know, whoever is from Andhra Pradesh or Telangana might know this. And she received the President's Award. So the Nandi Award especially is a more local recognized award. So that comes under one of the 10 criteria. But if she would have received like an Emmy Award or something like that, or a Nobel Prize or something, that Ms. itself Reddy, would have been enough to qualify her for.
I'm extremely sorry to cut you in between, Ms. Reddy. I'm really, really sorry, but we have a caller on hold.
Oh, callers are always welcome. So.
Right. I'm so sorry. I know you gave me that permission, which is why I took the liberty. So we have Mr. Satish calling from Atlanta. Thank you for calling, Mr. Satish. You may ask Ms. Reddy your question directly.
Hi, Ms. Reddy. I have 2 questions actually. I have applied my I-485 and got my EAD in September. My priority date is September 2020, and receipt date for 485 is December 30th, 2020. I'm waiting for my I-693 medical. So my first question is regarding medical. I got my medical exam done, but I haven't got an RFE, so I'm wondering whether I should enter file or not. Second question is regarding my travel to India. I was planning to travel to India in December, and since I'm EB1, I was expecting that I'll get my medical RFE and my green card somewhere in November, December. So I'm wondering whether I should take the risk of traveling since I've got my EAD advanced payroll, or should I avoid traveling to India at this point of time when I'm about to get my green card?
So the first question, which is, what was your first question again? Sorry.
It's regarding, I've done my medical exam, but I'm not.
Yeah, my interfiling. Got you. The interfiling of the medical exam. Sorry. The interfiling of the medical exam, that's really up to you. You're not losing anything by submitting the medicals in advance, but don't expect too much out of it. Don't expect that the medicals will 100% get to your file. Definitely expect that you will get an RFE. It's asking for the medicals again. So if you're okay with, doing them again and, spending that money again and making that effort, then go ahead and file. You have nothing to lose other than that. The second question is whether you should travel. That really is difficult to say because nobody can, obviously predict when you'll get the green card. But even if you do travel, if you're able to come back at short notice for whatever requirement there is, then it should be okay to travel as long as someone is monitoring your mail. If you get the green card and you're out of the country, then you will not be able to come back into the country unless you have that green card in hand. So then you might have to wait till the card is mailed to you, have someone who is monitoring your mail get that card FedEx to you in India, and then you can travel using that card. So that's one way out of it. That's the only advice I can give you. I can't predict, as no one can, when exactly you'll get your green card. But I hope it's soon. And I hope you can go on your vacation after getting the green card.
Right. I hope that answered your question, Satish. Thank you for calling. So, Ms. Reddy, you were telling us about the eligibility criteria of EB1-A Alien to Extraordinary Ability Petition of I-140.
Correct. So, so as I was telling you, and I gave you an example of the Nandi Awards. So, evidence of receipt of lesser known national or international award, evidence of your membership in associations in the field which demand outstanding achievement of their members. So we're talking about if you're a scientist, then you have to be a member in some association, which is not everyone is allowed to become a member of, that there's some category or some outstanding nature of your work that's required to even be a member of that association. So that's another criteria. Third is published material about you in a professional or major trade publication or any other major media. So if you're a scientist, then it would be your publications in scientific journals. And, usually 1 or 2 publications is not enough. I would say 5 to 10 publications is more like it. If you're an artist or athlete or someone well known, then you would be covered in the media, and then those media publications are also proof. The fourth criteria is evidence that you've been asked to judge the work of others, either individually or on a panel. For example, this artist who I was referring to used to be a judge in a really well-known, music show. So we use that, and she did that for, I think it was ZTV Awards or something like that. And we use that, as a criteria as well. And if you are, a scientist or someone who does work like that, then if you're asked to judge other people's scholarly publications, you are appointed as a judge, then that's definitely a criteria that will suffice for for the 3 out of 10 options. Now the next one is original scientific, scholarly, artistic, athletic, or business-related contributions of major significance to the field. So your original work, and you should show that it's not just marginal. Any work can be original, but the work has to be important. It can't be something of marginal importance. So if you've done some stem cell research to discover cancer, it's not that you've discovered cancer, you've discovered a cure to cancer. But you have to show that you've discovered something that's important towards the step of discovering a cure for cancer, some molecule or some combination of molecules which will help then, speed up the research. I'm just giving you an example. It could be something like that, or it could be in obesity, or it could be pain management, or any medical field, that is obviously a national interest. So it could be something like that, or it could be original contributions like writing. If you're an artist or a painting which became really famous, a song, you've written music, or whatever it might be, some achievement as an athlete. If you've won national or international acclaim as an athlete, that is of course helpful as well. Also, evidence of your authorship of scholarly articles in professional or trade publications. This I think we covered for the scientists. Publications in trade journals or scientific journals. The next one is evidence that your work has been displayed at artistic exhibitions or showcase. This is mainly for people who are in the visual arts. If your work has been showcased, say, in MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, or in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or any such big galleries, or National Gallery in India, that is a criteria, that's one of the 10 criteria. And remember, you only have to meet 3, but we usually try to show as many criteria as we can, that they meet as many as possible. Evidence of a leading or critical role in a distinguished organization. So say you were heading the department of some pediatrics, if you're a doctor and a researcher, then that would be evidence that you're in a leading role. Or if you're an actor and you play a leading role in a movie, or you're a director, or that is also proof of a leading role or a critical role. So that's another criteria. Then evidence that you command a high salary, that's one criteria also. So if you're receiving a high remuneration, you're a CEO of a really important company that's doing work that's of national interest, that's possible to show that as well, that you are not only in a high position, but you command you get paid a lot of money. That's one criteria as well. And of course, your commercial success. If you're in the performing arts, then how many albums went gold, or what's your rating on websites like iBet? If you even exist, are you on the internet? Are you on Wikipedia? How many successful movies did you act in? How much money did you make? All that is commercial success. So out of all these categories, remember we only have to meet 3. So that's basically the categories for extraordinary ability.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, we're going towards the end of the show. So is there a golden immigration message that you'd like to give to our viewers? Well, since we're talking about I-140s, I think it has to be something related to an I-140. And I would say that, since we're talking about EB1s, everybody thinks that they qualify for an EB1, and they don't. And so there's no purpose in filing something that is a long shot. My suggestion is, even if it's, go for the EB2 or EB3, unless you have at least 50% chance of getting an EB1 approved. And remember, not everyone qualifies. That's why it's called extraordinary ability or outstanding, or that's why it's called, those acronyms are used, those prefixes are used of extraordinary or outstanding. So just remember, though EB1 is great and visa numbers are available right now, and you can get your green card immediately, not everyone qualifies. But at the same time, it is possible for an average person, you don't have to be extraordinary, to qualify for a multinational executive. So, there's no harm in going out of the country, working for a year for an MLC, and then qualifying for an EB1 and coming back that way, rather than struggling with EB2, EB3, for whatever, 7 to 10 years. So that's something that people don't think about, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, even though it involves displacing yourself for a year. But remember, even that during that year, you can travel back and forth between the US and India. So there's definitely a criteria to keep in mind, the EB1 multinational executive. Right. I'm sure that was some sound advice, and I'm sure our viewers will actually think about it. So thought for food from Ms. Prashanthi Reddy for all our viewers. And it was a privilege hosting you, Ms. Reddy. Thank you.
Take care.
You're watching Sakshi TV Live with me, Torini Makana.